Let's talk about one of the biggest myths in tabletop gaming. And that's that old school D&D is confusing, math heavy, and impossible to learn without a spreadsheet and a time machine. You've heard it all. THACCO is nonsense. The attack matrix is a nightmare. Modern games fixed all this mess. But here's the truth. You can play any retro clone or classic edition of D&D and have combat flow just like it does in 5e or any other modern iteration of the game. And you do it with a simple trick that turns those intimidating numbers into a clean, intuitive roll. Today I'm going to show you how the so-called complex rules of old school D&D are actually way simpler than you've been told. And yes, it all revolves around our favorite number, 20.
I love this place!
A lot of 5e fans, especially those eyeing D&D 2024, might be feeling a little bit uncertain about the future of the game. 5e has been around for over a decade now, and while there's a solid game at its core, it's no secret that the players become powerful very quickly, often too quickly. In D&D 2024, culturally, it's pretty much dead on arrival. Nobody is talking about the game very much. It just kind of has the feeling of a moribund, bloated corpse. No game-changing mechanics, more player power creep, assuring them that they'll be superheroes by 5th level, and frankly, a visual style that's pretty much embarrassing. Now, I know some folks who don't like where modern D&D is headed have already jumped ship to alternatives like Shadowdark or Castles and Crusades, and honestly, those are great picks. If that's your new home, that's great, and I wish you years of great gaming with them. But I think a lot of players overlook the earlier editions of D&D, and especially the cleaned up, well-designed retro clones inspired by them. You may have seen games like Old School Essentials, Greg Gillespie's great Dragon Slayer, and Jeff Talanian's pulp fantastic Hyperborea. You may have seen these games and thought, well, those look cool, and they're compatible with thousands of classic adventures and source books. But aren't those the THACCO games? The ones with the clunky math and confusing charts from some bygone era played by miserable old grognards? Okay, first of all, rude. But second of all, I do get it. That is the perception. But it's based on a misunderstanding. And it's keeping people from experiencing some of the best games in the hobby. Take Jeff Talanian's Hyperborea, a pulp fantasy and super science RPG based on the original version of D&D. The quality of this game and its adventures is just on another level compared to what Wizards of the Coast or Paizo are putting out these days. Or look at Dwaro Deep from Greg Gillespie, the creator of Dragon Slayer. This sprawling dungeon crawl, a love letter to Moria, might honestly be the best adventure I've ever read, old or new. But too many players and DMs think these games are out of reach just because of one word, THACCO. So let's clean that up a bit. What is THACCO? It stands for 2-hit armor class 0. What you need to roll on a die 20 to hit an AC of 0. Classic D&D used a descending armor class system. The lower the AC, the harder it is to hit. Modern iterations, of course, use the opposite, where higher ACs are more difficult to hit. The older D&D versions gave you a chart, an attack matrix, showing exactly what you needed to roll against various armor classes. Now, that matrix only accounts for base attack bonus. You still have to add strength or dexterity, plus any sort of magical or situational modifier to the roll itself, and then check the chart to see if you hit. And yeah, I'll admit, it probably looks a little bit scary to some people. Even though it's not hard per se, the appearance of complexity is enough to make newer players bounce out. Because seeing a chart with 100 numbers on it feels a little bit like homework to a lot of people. And let's be honest, feel sometimes does matter. But here's the ridiculously simple solution. One that many of you already know, but not enough people talk about when playing basic D&D or a retro clone like Dragon Slayer or Hyperborea. and that is using your opponent's armor class in an old school version of D&D or a retro clone as a modifier to your roll, and always keeping the target number static at 20. All right, so let's say in 5e, you've got a fighter with a +2 base attack bonus, a +2 from strength, and a +1 from a magic sword. That's +5 total. Your target has an AC of 15, so you need to roll a 10 or better to hit. Ouch, looks like we missed there. Now let's do the same thing in classic D&D using descending AC in this method. So we have the same +5 attack bonus as before, the +2, +2, +1. But we're adding something to it this time. We're adding the opponent's armor class of 4. So instead of a +5 bonus to our die 20 roll, now we have a +9. And instead of going against a variable target number, we're going against a static number. It will always be 20. So in this case, we're adding +9 to our roll. We know our target is always 20, so we need an 11 or higher to hit. Looks like we got him this time. Remember, if the total is 20 or higher, you hit. It's always 20. Well, there you go. No charts, no THAC0, just math you already do instinctively. The beauty of this approach is the math really is identical to modern D&D. It just reframes how we express the role. The concept is actually in Greg Gillespie's Dragon Slayer game. He refers to it as Target 20. Greg's version is actually intended for the GM, for the monsters to use against the PCs. In this case, we'd be using the monster's hit dice as an attack bonus, plus the player's descending armor class. And we would add that to our die 20 as the GM and see if we hit our players. Again, always hoping for a 20 or higher. Now, what's frustrating is how Wizards of the Coast treats this part of D&D's history like it's a joke. Literally. In Wild Beyond the Witchlight, they introduced a character called THAC0 the Clown, who guards a gate. Gee, really subtle there, guys. It's a cheap shot, and par for the course for them. Sure, some folks view THAC0 as a gatekeeping tool, but for most of us, it's just how we learn the game, and the designers of these retro clones aren't trying to confuse anybody. They're simply paying homage to Gygax's original mechanics. This one simple method, call it Target 20 as Dragon Slayer does if you like, it unlocks an entire ecosystem of great games, great modules, and adventures. Gatekeeping is not the issue here, accessibility is. And this is how you make classic D&D accessible without sacrificing style or substance. So if you're a newer player and maybe tired of all of this and curious about what came before, just remember, you don't need charts. You don't need THAC0. You just need to understand the number 20. Well, that's all for today. If you enjoyed this breakdown, hit subscribe. I do a lot of content on the cultural mess surrounding RPGs, but I also love diving into mechanics occasionally, just like this. Remember to join us every Wednesday for The Lair. That's our weekly live stream where me and a few friends riff on RPG news of the day, industry trends, and whatever else nonsense we can find going on that week. We'd love to see you there. And let me know in the comments below, do you still use THAC0? Do you use the attack matrix, or do you use this little hack that I've shown you? That's, quite frankly, this is nothing new. I didn't discover this. It's been around, but I just don't think it gets enough publicity. Have you tried Target 20 from Greg's Dragon Slayer game? And what retro clones are you guys loving right now? I'd love to hear from you. Thanks again for watching, and as always, take care and have a great rest of your day. Peace.